I love it. Awesome. And we are live. First and foremost, buenas tardes to all of our LEC community. My name is Edgar Palacios. I'm the founder of the Latinx Education Collaborative, and we are back for 2021 with our first Ask an Educator of the Year with one of my favorite folks in the world, Carolina Salguero. Carolina, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, thank you. Surviving. There you go. Teaching online and surviving.
Not what you expected to be doing just a year ago.
Not at all. Not at all. I left for spring break, excited to get a week off, and then
everything's changed since then.
Yep. But
before we get into our real conversation, just let us know a little bit about yourself. Tell us about who you are, where you're from, what you're passionate about.
Where I'm from, I was born in a small village in El Salvador, in Departamento de Santa Ana. And then I came to the United States, and I've been teaching. This is my 15th year teaching, and definitely passionate about education, and I love kids. So that's me.
I love it. And we have some folks joining us today in the audience. Tony, hello. Welcome. Good to see you. Happy New Year. It's 21 days in, but still Happy New Year. You are absolutely passionate about kids. Something that I really enjoy about working with you and having met you is just your enthusiasm for the work and your enthusiasm to make sure that our kids and our students are well represented in schools. I'm going to take me back to El Salvador. So you were born in El Salvador. What was that like? Tell me about the village.
I think I had a beautiful childhood. My mom came to the United States when I was 3 years old, so I was raised by my grandparents. But in a village where it was just full of aunts and uncles and cousins, and it really, the philosophy or the idea of it takes a village to raise a child really happens, because I feel that I was blessed to be surrounded by a lot of love and care. And I lived with my grandparents, my older brother, and my cousins, and then my uncle and his wife. And so I had a big family, and it was beautiful. A lot of people, it's interesting when they're like, oh, you're from a village. Do you know how beautiful my childhood was? Very rural, definitely third world country, but I have really good memories. And I went back last year, and I loved visiting my village, and I still keep in contact with some of my family and friends. I actually was talking to a friend, a childhood friend that we went to school together last night. So yeah.
That's so awesome. No, and you're absolutely right. I think that people have interesting ideas around what where we are from sometimes looks like, or what it can be. And El Salvador is a. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. That's why I love your comment that you made today about a lot of people, they don't understand who we are and where we come from. And yes, we're here and we're immigrants, but we have full lives and we come from loving and caring families. Unfortunately, my mom came to the United States and I was left behind, but then I came, and you leave your roots behind. But I love where I come from. And in fact, I think that that's where part of my passion comes from, education, because I think I know and I've always valued what education can do to you in your life. And even as a little girl, just that admiration for teachers. And all I remember, my grandmother used to tell me, wow, because in the village where I was, you went to 5th grade. And then if you wanted to go to 6th grade, you had to go to another village. And as a girl, she used to tell me, you're not going to go to another village to school. So for a lot of girls, that's where your education stops. And so I remember being kind of bummed about that. So yeah.
And here you are.
And here I are. Yeah, my mom. Yeah.
I wanted to say hi to Yvonne. Yvonne, good to see you. That love and care is something you can pass on to your students. Love your story. Already connecting with the community. So Carolina, so we talk a lot about at part of our organization. Our mission is to increase the representation of Latinx educators in K-12. And so I'm always interested in just learning into how you became a teacher.
I was actually majoring in business, but then my own children, I have two adult kids, and they start school, and I was very involved in their education, volunteering and going on field trips and doing all of that. And I just fell in love. The teacher, I remember my daughter's kindergarten teacher would invite me over to read, and I just fell in love with it. And at that point in my life, being completely honest, just because of my trajectory in my life, I had dropped out of high school because I was pregnant. So I never thought that I would be able to achieve going to college and getting a bachelor's degree. And so I was doing something more like short. And so I remember she would be like, she's like, you're a natural, you're good with the kids and the kids love you. And you know how to talk to them. And so she kind of, got me that thinking, oh, maybe I could do it, and so I switched my major and that's how, but I fell in love with education because I seen what it did for me, for my kids. And I think I'm passionate about, especially underrepresented communities, to make sure that we get an education, because history shows it, we have never had the best education or the best opportunities handed to us. We've had to fight for them. So
What was your first teaching job?
my first teaching job, like teacher of my own classroom, actually was in Sweet Springs, Missouri, teaching kindergarten in a rural area. The only Latina. I think I told you this story when we did the podcast about I was like a big buzz in the small town, and I remember one of my students, she kept asking me one day, she said, are you brown? And she kept asking me, are you brown? And I'm like, what do you mean? And I'm like, she's like, are you brown? And so I put my skin against hers, and she's like, you don't look brown. And I'm like, honey, why are you asking me that? I kind of knew she wasn't hurt. And she's like, well, my aunt and my mom were talking, and they were saying that if you're Mexican, you must be brown. So the community, I think, I was able to represent well, and I was able to earn their respect when I left. They didn't want me to leave, and I think I don't know, I still have a couple of friends from that district, so it was a good experience. Yeah.
Just quickly, Yvonne says, our young people need to see this to feel comfortable, confident, and proud of who they are and where they're from. Thank you for sharing, Carolina. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I'm big on that too. I tell my students, you don't need to make yourself small, but it's part of I think the culture in the United States and the white supremacy that we deal with, where sometimes, like, I get really aggravated when my students do not know how to pronounce their names as Latinos, because we try to make it comfortable for white people. And so I tell them, you're Ramirez, Rodriguez, Contreras, you're not, don't change that. And it's the fact that, unfortunately, a lot of people's like, oh, whatever. No, not whatever. That's my name. Because I've been through a journey with my name. I changed my name when I got divorced, and I went back to, just Carolina Salguero, and that's my grandmother's last name. And and I'm like, I'm Salguero. I'm not Salguero. Just at least try to say my name correctly, please.
What I love about that story is also, last night we spoke to one of our award winners for our Aspiring Educator of the Year, and her name is Dayanari. And one of the reasons that she lists that she's becoming a teacher is because of people being unable or even making an effort to pronounce your name correctly, right?
Yeah.
And skipping it or going over it. And so, like you said, our name is a big part of who we are and our identity. And so it must.
Yeah, and I think, because I have friends who, I know they're not gonna roll their R's. I know they're not gonna pronounce it the way I pronounce it, but at least try. At least have the respect for my name. Because, like me, I'm Carolina. I'm not Carolina. I'm Carolina. And I'm big on when people say, how do you say your name? Carolina. I know you're not gonna say it perfectly, but it's not Carolina.
I mean, listen, there are a lot of difficult names from other languages that we always try and
yes, it's the same struggle.
So we're no different than that. We have a question from Tony. Tony asks, Carolina, how do you connect and inspire your students?
Connect with my students. I think the fact that I'm myself, and I am not afraid to be myself in front of my students. I am imperfect, I'm vulnerable, and I let them know how much I love them, because I think that's one of the things that I miss the most is, my students in my classroom. I wanted to be their second home, and I love them, and I love being with them, and it doesn't matter when or where, I love being with my students, and that helps me connect with them because they know that I want to be with them. You cannot fool kids, a fake smile, or even if you think you're there in your body, but if your mind and you're not there, they'll know. And so that's one way to connect with them and to inspire them, just for them to see them as people, as a whole person, and for them to know that they deserve to be heard, they deserve to be seen, and that they have value and a lot to offer, because I tell them I learn from them all the time. And so I think that's and to inspire them also to be proud of who they are and where they come from. I'm proud that as a Latina, I find that in the work that I've done in the past, especially when I was in a Shawnee Mission School, in the Shawnee Mission School District, where I was one of the few Latinas in the district, I think my students were inspired to be proud of who they were and where they come from, their language, their culture, their heritage. I had kids who were forgetting their Spanish, and then suddenly they wanted to speak Spanish, and I think that made me feel very, very proud and very, very good.
I'm thinking about this. So I remember when we first started doing stuff virtually, or just online, even as an organization. We're coming up to a year. Tell me about what this past year has been like for you as an educator. What have you learned? And also, like, what do you wish? Is there anything that you wish you can go back to?
I have learned, because I think sometimes this is new to us as educators. And sometimes I think I get frustrated sometimes, when you are teaching, and sometimes you think that you're teaching a lesson, you're teaching a concept or a skill, and you think the students should learn it quick, right? Because you already master it. And I think this experience has been humbling, because I'm learning alongside my students sometimes, just like what happened with us today, right? Like, click on that button. And so it's been humbling, very humbling, but at the same time, to see the resilience of my students and their families, and also to see the value they have with education, because I've been impressed with some of my families, the way they've changed their schedule and worked so hard to support their children. That makes me very, very proud. And what would I change? Can this pandemic be over? Can we just go back to the classroom? I would like to change that, because I do miss being in the classroom with my students very much. I have so many hugs to give.
Yeah, I keep hearing that. I think there are a lot of folks right now who are they understand the necessity of doing remote instruction and virtual instruction, but that one-on-one, that interpersonal connection with the students is something that they're really struggling with and missing. And nothing like a good hug sometimes.
I know. The other day I was telling my friend I spent 30 minutes having a conversation with a 3-year-old at the store about shoes. And then I looked up and I thought, wow, I really miss children.
I love it.
Her parents were so happy that I was talking to her. I'm like, I love kids. They are fun. I love working with kids.
And it's a good thing that you're an educator. It's a good thing that you do this for a living too. Tony says thank you for sharing your story. Yvonne has a question. So, what about your students' parents and families? How is the partnership between home and school where you teach?
I teach for Kansas City Public Schools. And when I was hired, hired to teach in a building, but then the numbers went down because they gave parents the option to do the virtual academy, and so they switched me to the virtual academy, which is a different program because kids follow a self-paced program online, and then I provide that support and mini lessons and one-on-ones. And so I think we have done a really good job of partnering with parents. I was very impressed from the beginning about the information we provided for the parents. And I can also speak from my 6th grade team. You know, we did a presentation for the parents to make sure they knew how to support their kids. And we joke that we're never offline because you're always talking to parents and whatever they need. And at the beginning, a lot of our parents do not have the technology literacy that they need to support their kids, but they really try, you know. And so just teaching them, it has been step by step, you know, like this is the program your child uses. This is how you log into, like, for example, I use Google Meet. Some of the teachers use Teams, and just educating the parents on how to support their children. It's a challenge because, you know, a lot of our families struggle a lot when it comes to having the time to support their kids. But that's one of the things we have done. And the district also has what they called, it's like a courses for the parents to educate the parents and teach them how to support their kids, which I think it's great that they're doing that. And basically they have my cell number and they call me anytime they want. At 3 o'clock on a Sunday, they're like, maestra, ayuda con un trabajo, okay?
You know, you say that, and I think also about, like, how are you handling self-care at the moment? Are you, like, how are you taking care of yourself? Because if people have access to you all the time, and you don't strike me as somebody who's going to say, like, don't call me.
And that's a struggle, and the struggle is real, and my team and I would talk about it all the time, because I know my like one of my strengths, I would say, is I build strong relationships with my students and my parents. And so my parents trust me that if they need something, they can reach out. And so, and my students the same. But at the same time, that's a challenge too, because, you know, I might be up at 7, and, you know, and if I have kids who are up, and it's funny because sometimes I'll go on Google Meet, and if they see I'm online, they log in, they're like, hi, which I love. But, you know, and I think, like, my coordinator is wonderful. Leslie Correa, shout out, she's amazing. She's told us, you know, self-care, set boundaries, but sometimes us as educators, it's hard. But self-care it's been a challenge for me. I think it's for me, it's just feeling isolated, and me in a new team, a new district, and at home. And so, you know, it's hard, but I try to exercise.
Would you say that this has been one of the harder years for you in your
Yes.
In your profession?
My first year teaching, piece of cake. This year, and even, you know, I was talking to my daughter, and I said, you know, even keeping my why, like, I know why I teach. My why, it's big. But I think that part of that why, it's who you're surrounding yourself with, your colleagues, the students, the parents. It keeps your dream and your passion alive. But I think now when you feel isolated, and you know, and sometimes with students online, especially the academy I'm in, it's a challenge. And so you get burnout, and you kind of start kind of like, oh my goodness, like. So it has been very, very, very challenging, and at the same time grateful, because I get to do what I love still in a different format. But it's been difficult.
You mentioned isolation, and, you know, something that we talk about a lot about at the LEC is retention, first and foremost, right? We know that Latinos come into this field of education, higher rates than other communities, but also exit at the highest rates. And one of the reasons that they cite is isolation. And so I'm curious, you've been in the classroom for a while now, right? So what has kept you in the classroom? Why? How have you subsisted and persisted in this space?
I think for me it's because this is what matters to me, and this is what I know makes an impact in my community and in the lives of children. And so when it gets challenging, I always look at that. And I know that I could do other things, other fields, but this is a career that leaves a legacy behind. And I think as human beings, we need to take responsibility and understand that I'm here because somebody else paved the way for me to be here. My teachers, my grandparents, my mother, and so, and my mentors, and everybody that has been part of my growth. And so now it's my turn to do the same for somebody else. And what better for me than children? Because especially, you know, like our Latino community, our Black community, we know that they're underserved. We know that there's no equity. We know that they have challenges that a lot of people do not understand. And so I do. And so I see parents' faces light up when I tell them that I speak Spanish, or that I'm from El Salvador, that I have a story that it's similar to theirs, and they see me as an example. And to me, that has value. And I have had, actually a couple of weeks ago, I had a student that I met years ago when I was teaching in Shawnee Mission. And she came and told me, she's like, I want you to know that I'm going into school to be a teacher, and it's because of you. And to me, and she's a Latina, and I'm like, yes, yes. And so I think that's why I've seen what good teachers do in the classroom and in the life of students, because it's not only the academics, it's the social, the emotional, the love, the kindness. To have somebody that you come in the morning and they see you, they greet you with a smile, and they make you that they're happy that to see you, to a child, that has immense value. And so that's why, and that's how. I wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
I love it. No, and I so appreciate that, and the story that you share about your student who credited you with their decision to become an educator. I think that that's something that we're also talking about a lot, right? Like we have to see it in order to be it, and it's that's what representation is about. You know, people want to recruit Latinos into the field, but it's incredibly difficult to do that without not being able to see them in the classrooms and in administration and other places. And so, I love collecting these anecdotes because I think it's important for us to continue to share that with folks, so they're reminded that, you know.
And a lot of people do not understand the value and the impact it has, because, you know, I was in a district where people would assume that I was either the translator or the custodian, or that I work in the kitchen, you know. And now that there's, you know, proud jobs, they do a great job, but why is it that you're assuming that I am not a professional in the field, in a building? And for parents to say that, you know, I remember parents be like, you know, it's Latina, y es la maestra, and they get just so happy, you know. And for students to see that, I think it's America Ferreira who said that representation creates possibilities. You know, when you see somebody else, and I want other kids to see me and see the possibilities that they have, and to help others. I always tell my students, you know, you get an education, you get a degree, you get either whatever it is that you have. We all have something to give to someone, and to help our communities, it should be, what can I give to make it better for them? Improvement.
You also mentioned your commitment to equity and social justice, and so I'm curious. Clearly, you know, 2020 was an incredibly difficult year in terms of social. Well, it wasn't any different of a year, I don't think, but I think that we saw some of the tension rise up, as it should. Tell me about how you're navigating that as a Latina, as a teacher.
For me, because I am so passionate about what I do, a lot of the injustices and the inequity that I see hurts and it makes me angry. And I'm learning little by little that I have to temper that anger because we need to work across the table with the people that can help us achieve that goal. But it is very frustrating because I think a lot of people don't understand. And, I live in a suburb where most people have the luxury of, working from home or, they don't understand that 20 minutes from here, 30 minutes from here, there are communities that are truly struggling, parents who are really struggling to support their kids. And it's hard because you get to see the other side of it, and unfortunately, a lot of our most vulnerable are the ones that have suffered the most. And I see it with my students. I started doing, like, I always do social emotional learning in the classroom. And I started doing where, every day I open my morning meeting with asking my students how they feel. And I gave them a link to a emotions dictionary where they can find words that describe how they're feeling. And it really helps because it's hard. It is hard for the kids. It's hard for the parents, and the parents feel overwhelmed and helpless. And that is terrible, to feel like you don't know what to do. And so, yeah, it's been very difficult, but
I'm taking notes as well. What books are you reading?
Right now, I just finished the one that I sent you that I was reading, Latin Experience, and I'm actually reading one about 100 of the 50th healthiest foods, and I'm also reading a book by Hattie, and Teach Like a Champion. I started reading that one too. So yeah, always reading, Edgar. You know it.
Tell me about the book that you sent me, and I want to make sure I get the title correct.
Well, the title is Inventing Latinos.
Inventing Latinos.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me what you discovered from that book.
Well, just our experience as Latinos in the United States and the struggles we've had to get into a place where we're seen and heard. And just, I talked a lot about education, like that so many generations of children lost their Spanish because they wouldn't allow them to speak Spanish, or they received a really poor education because of segregation. Our schools were also segregated, and just the people that had to fight in order for us to be able to be who we are. I think a lot of generations, and I think I came to the United States in 1985, and I think I got to see a little glimpse of what it's like for a lot of people to have be ashamed of who they are, where they come from, their language, would they want to be perceived, especially Latinos. You want to be perceived as white because that whiteness is going to give you a privilege that other don't have. And so the book talks about that. The history, I love what it says, because even with the climate that we've had in the United States lately with the anti-immigrant rhetoric, and I love what she says. And it wasn't an activist that said it. We are here because you were there first. You came to my country and destroyed it. And now I'm here because I have to. And so she talks about what capitalism, imperialism has done to our nations. And so it's very eye-opening. It's a really good book. I had to stop a little bit sometimes because I was getting angry. But it's a good book. Very, very good information that we need to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another friend that's it's a member of a board of education. I'm like, we need to have a course where we use this book.
Yeah.
So, and not only for everybody, because I think all of us need to understand where we're coming from. We cannot we cannot understand each other unless we know each other, and we all have our history.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And something I've been thinking about is just maybe inviting you to help us lead a book study around Inventing Latinos and Laura Gomez's book, because I think that would be a fun community read, but also important. Like, to your point, we need to know our history, and we need to know some of these issues that you know we don't talk about in sixth grade history.
Yeah, no, and that's one thing that I've always done. And I think I always talk to my students very honestly. This is in kid-friendly terms, but they need to understand and know who they are and where they come from. And my daughter just went to visit her dad in Mexico, and that's one of the things that she came back saying. She went to Guadalajara, and and her boyfriend is white, and he gets see. I mean, that's our history, and that's her history, and it's important for them to know that our history is rich, and we have arts and culture and great books, and kids need to know that so that nobody makes them feel small.
I just think about that. The amount of knowledge that we don't even know about our own history and about the contributions that we as a community have brought.
Yes.
Not just in this country, but everywhere else from where we're from as well. It's a huge missed opportunity, but something that I'm also excited there. The people like you who are reading, who are educating, and also sharing that information with our students, right, from a place of empowerment. So a couple more questions before I let you go back to reading another book. As you look ahead, what are some of your goals? What are some of your aspirations over the next year or so as an educator?
Keep teaching, stay in the classroom, and I have other goals that I want to pursue, but just continue working with the community where I live and try to be a force for good, make an impact with the children that I work with, love them, cherish them, value them. For me, there's nothing more beautiful than to look at a child's eyes and for them to know that I'm there for them and I love them. Because I know that leaves a mark. I think it was Maya Angelou that said, "It's not what you say, it's not what you do, it's how you make people feel." And I think kids are keen at knowing truly who you are and how you make them feel. And so just keep at it. Keep at it and do your book study. I'll do that book study.
I love it. I get one final question for you. So we are trying to encourage more Latinos to get into the field, to become educators, to go in the classrooms. So I guess, what is one piece of advice or one nugget of wisdom that you might share with them that hopefully motivate them and support them in their journey?
I think everybody, as a human, that's our tendency. We want to leave a legacy behind. All of us. That's why we have artists, and it's a way for humans to say, I was here. And I think teaching is one of those professions where I always say, a child that you help, that you support, it's always going to remember that. And that child is going to grow up and talk to his or her kids. So your legacy never dies, in a way. And what better way than to help someone shape who they are and who they become? So if you're thinking of becoming an educator, think of the impact that you can have on a child and on a community, in a family, because we're providing that support. I see myself as a public servant. I'm here to serve my students and my community. And so there's no better way to honor the ones that came in the past and maybe didn't have the opportunities we have, but we have them because of them. But it's a beautiful feeling, and it's a beautiful gift that I love what I do. I think I'm happy to get up and do what I do and interact with my kids and their families. So do it. And just remember, as a Latino, you know, we cannot expect other people to come and help us improve. We need to do it ourselves. So we need to take responsibility for our communities in a way too.
Some strong words to end the conversation on, Carolina. Just quickly for our community who's joined us today, if you're new to the LEC, make sure to like our Facebook page and follow us to keep up to date with all the latest things we're doing. You might also be joining us from YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. I can't believe I'm even saying this. This is not, that is so weird to me. Anyways, make sure to follow our community because we have phenomenal folks. We have phenomenal Latinx educators like Carolina who are doing this work, who are in the trenches day to day. And at the very least, we want to love on them and make sure that we know that they know that we value them, that we love them, and that we want them to continue to be successful in their work.
No, thank you, Edgar, for what you do too, because I remember when I met you and I met other Latino educators in Kansas, I'm like, where were you? I was over there thinking I was by myself. And here you are. So what you do is incredible. I love your work.
Well, I appreciate that, Carolina, and I can't do my work without folks like yourself either. And so what I love
I'm like, they're right there. They're right there.
So thank you so much for all the work that you do, and thank you for joining us today. We are back. It's 2021. I can't wait to see what this year looks like, and we all get to design that together. So for everybody, enjoy the rest of your evening. Carolina, muchas gracias. Te lo agradezco.
Gracias a ti. Cuídate.
Adiós.
La esposa de tu bebé está hermosa.